It was one of those slow Saturday afternoons when the air feels heavy but peaceful. The sky hung low with soft gray clouds and the streets were quiet except for the hum of distant traffic. A teenager named Jaden decided to step out for a short walk. He had been studying all morning for a math test and wanted to clear his head. He put on his hoodie, slipped his phone into his pocket, and left home with no hurry. He didn't expect the day to change the way he saw the world. Jaden lived in a nice neighborhood, quiet, filled with neat lawns and tall trees that shaded the sidewalks. He had walked to the convenience store many times before. He wasn't doing anything different that day. His earbuds were in, and a soft tune played as he walked with his hands in his pockets. He greeted a woman walking her dog, waved to a passing car, and continued toward the small shop a few blocks away. Everything felt normal, until he noticed a police car parked across the street. The car didn't move at first. It just sat there. Jaden didn't think much of it. Police often patrolled the area, but as he walked past, he felt eyes on him. The car slowly rolled forward, keeping pace with him. The music in his ears suddenly felt distant. He pulled out one earbud and glanced over. 2 officers sat inside, both watching him closely. He looked away quickly and kept walking, his heart beating faster for reasons he couldn't explain. Within seconds, he heard the sound of tires rolling over gravel. The police car pulled up beside him and one of the officers rolled down his window. "Hey, you there, hold up a second," the man called out. Jaden stopped, unsure what to do. "Yes, sir?" he asked politely, his voice steady though his stomach turned tight. The officer stepped out of the car, closing the door with a heavy thud. "Where you headed?" he asked. "Just to the store," Jaden said. "You live around here?" "Yes, sir. Just a few streets down." The other officer stayed in the car, but his eyes were sharp, following every small movement Jaden made. The first officer folded his arms and looked him up and down. "We got a report of someone matching your description walking around the neighborhood," he said. Jaden frowned a little. "Matching my description? What did they say?" "Tall, dark hoodie, walking alone." "Same as you," the officer replied. His tone wasn't angry, but it wasn't friendly either. Jaden nodded slowly. "I just came out to buy some chips. I've got my wallet and everything. Mind if I see some ID?" Jaden reached into his pocket carefully, but he noticed the officer's hand move slightly toward his belt. He froze for a second, not sure if he should keep going. "It's in my back pocket," he said softly. "Can I get it?" "Go ahead. Slowly," the officer said. Jaden did as told, pulling out his wallet and handing over his school ID. The officer looked at it for a long time, as though reading every letter twice. Then he asked more questions: where he went to school, what his parents did, why he was out alone. Jaden answered each one, trying to stay calm. But something inside him felt unfair. Why was he being questioned like this? He hadn't done anything wrong. After a few minutes, Jaden tried to explain himself again. "Sir, I didn't do anything. I'm just going to the store. You can call my mom if you want." The officer didn't respond right away. He looked back at his partner, then at Jaden. "We just need to be sure. There's been a lot of break-ins lately. Can't be too careful." Jaden nodded, even though he knew he wasn't the person they were looking for. He tried to stay polite the way his mother had always taught him. She worked in law enforcement herself, and she had told him what to do if something like this ever happened. Stay calm, be respectful, and don't argue. But that was easier said than done when your heart was racing and strangers were treating you like a suspect. As they stood there, a car drove by slowly. A woman inside stared at the scene, curious. Another man on a bicycle slowed down, watching quietly. Jaden could feel the attention on him, and it made him even more nervous. He tried to explain again, but the officer interrupted, asking if he had anything in his pockets besides his phone and wallet. "No, sir," Jaden said. "Mind if I check?" Jaden didn't want any trouble. "You can, but I don't understand why." "It'll just take a second," the officer said, stepping closer. Jaden swallowed hard. He wasn't sure what to do. He raised his hands a little, not because he was guilty, but because he wanted to look harmless. Inside, his chest felt tight. He thought about calling his mom right then, but he didn't want to make things worse. The officer gave a quick pat down, then stepped back. "All right," he said. "You can relax. But you need to understand, people get nervous when they see someone walking around like this." Jaden looked down at his clothes, a hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. "Like what?" he asked softly. The officer didn't answer. Instead, he handed back the ID and told him to stay out of trouble. Then, without another word, he turned and got back in the car. The patrol car rolled forward slowly, its tires crunching against the pavement before turning the corner and disappearing. Jaden stood there for a moment, frozen. The wind picked up a little, rustling the leaves on the trees. His hands trembled slightly as he put his wallet back into his pocket. He felt both relieved and angry, confused about what had just happened. He kept walking to the store, but the lightness of his earlier mood was gone. Every step felt heavier. He replayed the scene in his head again and again, how the officer's eyes looked at him, how his voice carried suspicion, how the air around him had turned cold so quickly. He thought about how easily things could have gone wrong, and the thought made him shiver. At the store, the clerk greeted him as usual. "Hey, Jaden. Haven't seen you in a while," she said with a smile. He forced a smile back. Yeah, just needed a break from studying. He bought his snacks and stepped outside again, but this time he looked around carefully before heading home. Every car that passed made him uneasy. Every sudden noise made him glance over his shoulder. The street that once felt friendly now felt uncertain. Halfway home, he stopped at a small park bench and sat down. The chips sat unopened in his hand. He stared at the sidewalk, thinking about his mom. She always told him she wanted him to feel safe no matter where he went. She worked so hard for that. But now he wondered if safety depended on where you were, or who you were. He pulled out his phone and texted her. "Hey, I'm fine. Just wanted to let you know I'm on my way back." He didn't mention the police yet. He didn't want her to worry while she was at work. But deep down he knew he'd have to tell her eventually. She'd find out, and when she did, she wouldn't stay quiet. Jaden sat for a few minutes longer, letting the cool air calm him down. He tried to shake off the uneasy feeling, but it clung to him like a shadow. The sound of children playing in the distance felt far away, like it belonged to a different world. He wasn't sure what hurt more, the fear he'd felt or the unfairness of being treated that way for doing nothing wrong. When he finally got up and started walking again, he took the longer route home. He needed time to think. He imagined what his mom would say. She'd probably be furious that someone had stopped him without reason. She might even go to the police station herself. The thought made him smile a little, but it also made him realize how powerful she was and how powerless he had just felt. By the time he reached home, the sun had started to set, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink. He stood on the porch for a moment, breathing deeply. The world looked calm again, but he wasn't the same. He unlocked the door and stepped inside, the sound of quiet music from the living room greeting him. His mom wasn't home yet, and that gave him a little time to gather his thoughts. He sat at the table, staring at his phone. His reflection stared back from the dark screen. Tired eyes, tense shoulders, a look that didn't belong to a carefree teenager anymore. He opened a bag of chips and tried to eat, but the taste felt distant. He just kept thinking about the flashing lights, the questions, and the way his chest had tightened when he heard the officer's voice. He didn't know that the story wasn't over yet. In fact, the moment he would finally tell his mother what happened would change everything, not only for him, but for everyone who had witnessed that afternoon. What happened next would be remembered far beyond that quiet street. Jaden woke up the next morning still thinking about what had happened. The sunlight coming through the blinds made everything look peaceful, but his mind was restless. He had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that police car pulling up beside him. He heard the voice of the officer asking questions he didn't deserve. He sat on the edge of his bed looking at his phone. His mom had already left for work. She had sent a short message earlier, reminding him to eat breakfast and study for his test. He wanted to reply, but his fingers froze over the screen. Should he tell her? He didn't want to make her worry before she even started her day. Jaden finally typed, "Morning, Mom, I'll study today," and left it at that. He went downstairs, made himself some cereal and tried to focus on his notes, but his thoughts kept wandering. Every few minutes he looked out the window, half expecting to see another patrol car. The neighborhood seemed quiet, but something inside him had changed. He felt watched even when no one was there. Around noon, his phone buzzed with a message from his friend Daniel. "Hey man, saw a video online." "Was that you yesterday?" Jaden's stomach dropped. "What video?" He typed back quickly. Daniel sent a link. Jaden hesitated before clicking it. The video opened to a shaky phone recording. It was him, standing on the sidewalk with his hands slightly raised while an officer questioned him. A few voices in the background could be heard saying things like, "He's just a kid," and "This doesn't look right." His chest tightened as he watched. He hadn't realized someone had filmed the whole thing. The clip wasn't long, but it showed enough. The suspicion in the officer's tone, the nervous look on Jaden's face, the way he tried to stay calm. And in the comments section, people were already arguing. Some said the police had overreacted. Others defended them. Jaden turned off his phone, feeling a rush of heat in his face. He didn't want to be part of any argument. He didn't even want attention. He just wanted things to go back to normal. But things were about to get more complicated. A few hours later, while he was sitting at the kitchen table pretending to study, he heard the front door open. His mother was home earlier than usual. Her voice called out from the hallway, "Jaden? You here?" He froze for a second, then answered, "Yeah, I'm in the kitchen." She walked in wearing her work clothes, dark jacket, badge clipped to her belt, eyes sharp but kind. "How was your day?" she asked, putting her keys down. "Fine," he said quickly. She studied him for a moment, sensing something was off. "You sure?" "Yeah, just tired. Been studying all day." She didn't look convinced, but she nodded and went to pour herself some water. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. "What's this?" she murmured, scrolling through something. Jaden's heart began to pound. He didn't need to ask. He already knew. His mother looked up from her phone, her expression changing in an instant. "Jaden," she said slowly, "why am I seeing a video of you being stopped by the police?" He swallowed hard. There it was, the moment he'd been trying to avoid. "It wasn't a big deal," he said quickly. "They thought I was someone else." "It's fine now." "Fine?" she repeated, disbelief in her voice. "They stopped you? Questioned you? And you didn't tell me?" Jaden lowered his eyes. "I didn't want to make it worse. I'm okay." She sat down across from him, her expression softening slightly, though her eyes still burned with frustration. "Honey, you shouldn't have to deal with that alone. You did nothing wrong." He nodded, but words stuck in his throat. He wanted to tell her how scared he had felt, but part of him didn't want to relive it. His mom took a deep breath. "Did they touch you? Did they say anything threatening?" "No, they just treated me like I was guilty." She leaned back, silent for a moment. Then she said quietly, "You know what I do for a living, and even I can't believe this still happens." Jaden looked up at her. "Please don't make a scene, Mom, it's over." But she didn't answer. Her face was calm, but her mind was racing. She knew she couldn't ignore this. Not as a mother. Not as an agent who had sworn to uphold fairness. That night, Jaden stayed in his room, scrolling through comments online, even though he had promised himself not to. The video had already spread. Some people were supportive, saying how brave he had been to stay calm. Others wrote things that made his stomach twist. Cold, careless words from people who didn't even know him. He turned off his phone and stared at the ceiling. The quiet felt heavy. He wished everything could just disappear. Meanwhile, in her bedroom, his mother was making calls. She spoke to someone from the local department, her tone controlled but firm. She wanted to know which officers had been on duty at that time. She didn't mention yet that the boy in the video was her son. She wanted the facts first. By the next morning, she had all the information she needed. And when she found out which officers had stopped Jaden, she recognized one of the names. She had attended a joint training session with him months earlier. That made her blood run cold. At breakfast, she told Jaden she was going to handle it. He didn't like the sound of that. "Mom, please don't make this bigger than it is," he said. She shook her head. "It's already big, Jaden. The moment they stopped you without reason, it became big. If I stay silent, they'll do it to someone else." He sighed, pushing his food around his plate. "I just don't want more attention." She reached over and put a hand on his. "I understand. But sometimes silence protects the wrong side." He didn't answer. He knew she was right, but he was scared of what might happen next. Later that day, she put on her FBI jacket and told him she had to step out for a few hours. He watched her leave, feeling both proud and nervous. He knew his mom didn't just talk about justice. She lived it. But this time, justice wasn't for a stranger. It was for him. As the hours passed, Jaden tried to distract himself. He played music, watched a movie, even tried to study again. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was building, like a storm about to break. Outside, the weather seemed to agree. Dark clouds began to gather and thunder rumbled in the distance. Jaden stood by the window watching raindrops start to fall. He thought about that moment when the officer had told him to stop. The way the man's voice had sounded certain that Jaden was up to no good. That certainty had hurt more than anything. He didn't know where his mom was exactly, but he knew her well enough to guess. She was probably at the precinct asking hard questions in that calm but powerful way only she could. And he was right. At that very moment, she was standing inside the local station, speaking with a commanding voice that made even senior officers listen carefully. She wasn't there to shout or accuse. She was there to demand accountability. 2 of your officers stopped a teenage boy yesterday, she said evenly. They had no warrant, no clear reason, and no evidence. The officer in charge shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, I'm not sure of the details. You should be, she interrupted. Because that boy is my son. The room went silent. Back at home, Jaden had no idea what was unfolding, but he felt a strange calm knowing his mother was handling it. She was the kind of person who didn't back down when something was wrong. As the rain poured outside, he sat by the window, remembering what she always told him when he was little. Never let fear change who you are. He whispered the words quietly to himself, trying to believe them again. That night, when his mother returned home, she looked tired but determined. She didn't tell him all the details yet, only that the situation was being reviewed, but he could tell from her eyes that this wasn't the end of it. She hugged him tightly, holding on longer than usual. You did nothing wrong, she said softly. I know, he replied, but it still feels like I did, she sighed. That's exactly what I'm going to change. Jaden didn't understand then how serious she was, but soon everyone would. The next few days felt strange for Jaden. Everything looked the same outside, the same houses, the same quiet streets, but inside nothing felt normal. Every time he saw a police car pass by, his stomach tightened. Even when it wasn't the same officers, he couldn't shake the image of their faces and the way they had looked at him. His mother tried to act calm around him, but he could tell something was going on. She spoke on the phone a lot, using a voice that was calm but firm, the voice she used when she was handling something serious. He overheard bits and pieces, words like procedure, body cam, and unnecessary stop. He didn't ask questions. Part of him didn't want to know. He just wanted the whole thing to fade away. But things like that didn't fade easily. One afternoon, while he was at home trying to focus on his schoolwork, the doorbell rang. When he opened the door, 2 men in suits stood there. They looked official, but not threatening. One of them introduced himself politely and said they were from the local precinct's internal review team. They wanted to ask a few questions about what had happened. Jaden froze for a second, then nodded. My mom's not home right now, he said quietly. That's fine, one of them said. We just wanted to check in and make sure you're okay. We're reviewing the incident. Jaden didn't know what to say. He just nodded again. I'm fine. They handed him a card and told him his mother could call them back. As soon as they left, he felt a wave of anxiety. He knew this meant the situation was serious, much more than he had realized. When his mom came home later, he told her about the visit. She wasn't surprised. She took the card, glanced at it, and set it on the counter. Good, she said. They should be looking into it. Jaden hesitated before asking, Are you in trouble for talking to them? She looked at him, her face softening. No, honey. I'm doing my job, just like they should be doing theirs. He nodded, though it didn't ease his mind completely. He didn't like the idea of his mom being in the middle of something that felt so big. She was his safe place, and now she was standing in the storm. That evening, his mom sat him down at the kitchen table. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. She took a deep breath before speaking. Jaden, she said gently, I met with the officer's supervisor today. I told them what happened from your side and I showed them the video. He looked up, surprised. You showed them? Yes, I wanted them to see exactly how it looked, how it felt for you. I told them that I'm not here as an FBI agent. I'm here as a mother who watched her son get treated like a suspect for no reason. Jaden didn't say anything for a moment. He didn't know whether to feel proud or scared. What did they say? They apologized, she said slowly. At least that's what they called it. But words are easy, Jaden. Change is harder. He understood. She wasn't satisfied with just an apology. She wanted something real to come out of it. Later that night, Jaden went up to his room and stared out his window. The street looked peaceful, with porch lights glowing and crickets chirping. But the peace didn't feel real anymore. He thought about how quickly things had turned from normal to terrifying. One misunderstanding could change everything. He tried to go to sleep, but his mind kept racing. He kept hearing that officer's voice, calm but cold, asking him where he lived, what he was doing, as if he didn't belong in his own neighborhood. The next morning, Jaden's mom was gone before he woke up. She had left a note on the counter that said, "At the station for a meeting. Don't worry. Be home for dinner. Love you." He smiled faintly at the last part. But as the day passed, he couldn't help feeling uneasy. Every minute that went by felt longer. In the afternoon, his phone rang. It was her. "Hey, Mom," he said, trying to sound casual. "Hey, sweetheart." Her voice came through, calm but serious. "Where are you?" "At home. Why?" "Stay there, okay? I'll be back soon." There was something in her tone, controlled but firm. Before he could ask more, the line went quiet. Jaden sat down on the couch, confused. He turned on the TV to distract himself, but his mind wouldn't settle. An hour passed, then two. The light outside started to fade. Then his phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't a call. It was a text from one of his friends. "Bro, are you okay? Something's happening near your street." Jaden jumped up and looked outside. Down the road, flashing lights reflected off the houses. Police lights. His pulse quickened. He grabbed his jacket and ran outside, ignoring the cold air hitting his face. As he got closer, he saw a small crowd forming near the same intersection where everything had happened a few days ago. 2 police cars were parked there, and the scene looked tense. For a second, his stomach dropped. Then he saw her. His mother's car pulled up fast, stopping right beside the flashing lights. She stepped out, wearing her work jacket with her badge visible. The people in the crowd stepped back as she walked forward with calm authority. Jaden had never seen her like that before. Strong, steady, and fearless. He stayed back, his heart pounding, trying to see what was happening. One of the officers looked startled as she approached. She spoke clearly, her voice cutting through the noise. He couldn't hear every word, but he could tell from her tone that this wasn't just a talk, it was a confrontation. From where Jaden stood, he saw her hold up her badge and say something that made both officers freeze. One of them looked pale, glancing at his partner. People around started whispering. Some were recording again, phones raised in the air. Jaden couldn't hear the details, but he could feel the power in her presence. She wasn't just standing up for him now, she was standing up for something much bigger. After a few minutes, she turned and saw him in the crowd. Their eyes met. She gave a small nod, a silent signal that everything was okay. He wanted to run to her, but he stayed still, watching in awe. Eventually, the tension eased. The officer spoke quietly with her, nodding, and then slowly stepped back toward their car. The lights dimmed and the small crowd began to scatter. When his mom finally walked over, Jaden could see the exhaustion on her face, but also pride. "Mom, what was that?" he asked softly. She exhaled deeply, resting a hand on his shoulder. "Just a reminder," she said. "A reminder that some people need to be held accountable." They walked home together, the cool night air wrapping around them. For a while, neither of them spoke. Jaden felt safe beside her, yet part of him still couldn't believe everything that had happened in just a few days. When they got home, she locked the door and sat down on the couch. Jaden sat beside her, waiting for her to say more. "I didn't plan for things to go this way," she said quietly, "but I couldn't stand by and pretend it was fine." Those officers needed to understand the difference between suspicion and bias, between doing their job and crossing a line. Jaden nodded slowly. "Did you get in trouble?" She smiled faintly. "If I did, I'll handle it. I've been through worse. What matters is that they know they can't treat people unfairly and walk away from it." He leaned back, feeling both proud and overwhelmed. "You really scared them, didn't you?" Her smile widened a little. "Maybe just enough." They both laughed softly, and for the first time in days, the house felt warm again. Later that night, when Jaden went to his room, he sat on his bed and stared at the quiet street outside. The flashing lights were gone now. Everything looked peaceful again. But he knew things were different, not just for him, but for his mother too. He realized something important that night. Courage didn't always mean fighting or shouting. Sometimes it meant standing your ground calmly when everything inside you wanted to run. That's what his mother had done, and that's what she had taught him to do without even saying it. As he lay down, he felt a new kind of respect for her. She wasn't just his mom. She was someone who could walk into a room full of fear and change it with a single word. Before he drifted off to sleep, his phone buzzed again. It was a message from her, even though she was just downstairs. It said, "I'm proud of you for staying calm that day. You did everything right." He smiled in the dark, whispering softly to himself, "You did too, Mom." Outside, the world was quiet again, but deep inside, Jaden knew this was just the beginning. The morning after everything happened felt strangely quiet. The house was calm, but underneath that calm was something heavy, something neither Jaden nor his mother could quite put into words. The night before had changed everything. It wasn't just about a misunderstanding anymore. It was about truth, fairness, and the strength of one woman who refused to look the other way. Jaden woke up early. He sat on the edge of his bed, still processing everything. He kept replaying that moment in his mind, his mother stepping out of the car, her voice steady and commanding, the way the officers froze when she showed her badge. He had never seen her like that before. It was as if two sides of her life had collided. The mother who made pancakes on weekends and the federal agent who stood her ground when the world turned unfair. He walked downstairs, still lost in thought. His mom was already up, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee and her phone in her hand. Papers were spread out in front of her. She looked tired but focused. "Morning," he said quietly. She looked up and smiled softly. "Morning, honey. Did you sleep?" "Not really," he admitted. "You?" She shook her head. "A little. My phone hasn't stopped buzzing." "Because of last night?" She nodded. "Someone filmed it again. It's already all over the internet." Jaden's eyes widened. "Wait, really?" She sighed, rubbing her forehead. "I didn't ask for attention. I just wanted to make a point. But it's out there now, and people are reacting." He sat down across from her. "What are they saying?" "Some are angry at the officers. Some are praising me. Others are twisting the story like they always do," she said, her tone calm but tired. "But that's not what matters. What matters is that it's starting a conversation." Jaden looked at her, noticing the weight behind her words. "You really think it'll change something?" She met his eyes. "Maybe not the whole world, but maybe it'll make a few people think twice before judging someone by how they look." "That's a start," he nodded slowly. "I guess so." Just then her phone rang again. She looked at the screen and hesitated for a moment before answering. Jaden could only hear her side of the conversation. Her tone shifted from gentle to professional. "Yes, I'm aware. I understand. No, I didn't make it a public issue. It became one on its own. Yes, I'll come in." When she hung up, she exhaled deeply. "That was my supervisor," she said. "They want to talk." Jaden frowned. "Are you in trouble?" She shook her head, but her expression said she wasn't sure. "I'll find out." He didn't like the sound of that. "You stood up for what was right. They can't be mad about that." She smiled a little. "You'd be surprised how complicated things get when the truth hits the wrong people." Later that morning, she changed into her work clothes and grabbed her badge. Before leaving, she looked at him and said, "No matter what happens, you remember this, you did nothing wrong. Don't let anyone make you feel small for speaking the truth." He nodded. "I won't." She smiled and left, her car pulling away quietly down the street. The rest of the day moved slowly. Jaden tried to distract himself, but he couldn't stop worrying. He cleaned his room, scrolled through his phone, and even tried to read, but his thoughts kept going back to his mom. What if her job got complicated because she stood up for him? What if people at work treated her differently now? By afternoon, he decided to take a walk. He put on his jacket and headphones and stepped outside. The air was cool and calm. As he passed by neighbors, a few people gave him looks, some sympathetic, some curious. He realized many of them had probably seen the videos. At the small corner store, the same clerk from before greeted him kindly. "Hey kid, how's your mom doing?" she asked. "She's fine," he said, though he wasn't completely sure. "Well, tell her we're proud of her," the woman said. "Takes guts to stand up like that." Jaden smiled faintly. "Yeah, she's strong like that." As he walked home, he felt a strange mix of pride and nervousness. He was proud of his mother, proud that she didn't back down, but he also worried about what might happen next. The truth had a way of making people uncomfortable, and not everyone liked uncomfortable truths. When evening came, the sky turned deep orange. Jaden sat by the window waiting for the sound of his mom's car. Hours passed. The streetlights came on. His phone stayed silent. Finally, around 8 p.m., he heard the familiar sound of the garage door. He rushed downstairs, and there she was, looking tired but steady. "Hey," he said quickly. "How did it go?" She set her bag down and leaned against the counter. "It went fine," she said. "They asked questions, lots of them. They wanted to know why I showed up the way I did, why I got involved personally. You told them the truth, right?" "Of course," she said firmly. "I told them I didn't step in as an agent. I stepped in as a mother. They can call it whatever they want, but that's the truth." Jaden studied her face. "Are they mad?" She smiled softly. "Some are, but others understand. They've seen this kind of thing before. They know how fast situations can go wrong." He felt relief wash over him, though a part of him knew it wasn't over. After dinner, his mom got a message from a journalist asking for an interview. She showed Jaden the message and said, "They want me to talk publicly." He hesitated. "Are you going to?" She looked thoughtful. "I don't know yet. I didn't plan to become part of a story. But if it helps people understand what really happens in these moments, maybe I should." Jaden didn't say anything. He just nodded. Deep down, he knew that once his mother made up her mind, she rarely backed down. The next morning, things moved quickly. Local news picked up the story. There were clips, comments, and debates. People were talking not just about what happened, but about the larger issue. How often innocent people get judged before they're understood. Jaden tried to stay offline, but curiosity got the best of him. He searched his mother's name, and there she was, standing in front of cameras, speaking calmly. She wasn't angry or emotional. She was just honest. She said, "I'm not here to point fingers. I'm here to remind everyone that respect and caution must go both ways. My son is alive and safe, but that's not the case for everyone. We have to do better." Her words spread quickly. People shared her speech everywhere. Jaden watched her with pride swelling in his chest. She didn't use her badge to protect her reputation. She used it to protect the truth. That evening, she came home quietly. She didn't brag or celebrate. She just sat down beside Jaden on the couch. "You spoke really well," he said. She smiled gently. "You saw it?" "Everyone saw it." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "I didn't do it for attention. I just wanted them to know you deserved better." "I know," he said. "But still, you made a difference." For the first time in days, they both felt a small sense of peace. The world outside was still buzzing with opinions and headlines, but inside their home there was calm. They had faced something ugly and turned it into something meaningful. That night, Jaden couldn't sleep again. But this time it wasn't because of fear. It was because he was thinking about how much had changed in such a short time. He had seen how strong his mother was, but also how deeply she cared. He realized that true strength didn't come from power or rank. It came from standing up for what was right, even when it was uncomfortable. Before going to bed, he went downstairs for a drink of water. His mom was still awake, sitting at the table with her laptop open, typing notes. He paused at the doorway. "You're still working?" he asked. She looked up and smiled. "Always," he leaned against the doorframe. "You think things will really change now?" She thought for a moment before answering. "Change takes time. But every time someone tells the truth, the world shifts a little. And maybe that's how real change starts, little by little." Jaden nodded slowly. "I get that." She closed her laptop and stood up, walking over to him. "I'm proud of you, you know," she said softly. "You handled everything with so much strength. You didn't let fear win." He smiled. "I had a good teacher." She laughed quietly and hugged him. For a long time, they stayed like that. No words, just the quiet understanding between them. Outside, the night was calm. The storm that had once surrounded them had passed, leaving a sense of stillness behind. But inside that stillness was something powerful, a quiet kind of courage that would last. Neither of them knew what would happen next, or how far their story would spread. But one thing was certain: they had faced fear, and they had turned it into something stronger: truth, respect, and hope. And for Jaden, that was enough. The days after the incident felt different for Jaden and his mother. Life in the neighborhood seemed normal again, but both of them knew that nothing would ever be exactly the same. People whispered, stared, and some even smiled when they saw them. Jaden tried to ignore it, but deep down he knew the world had changed in some way, not just for him, but for everyone who had seen the story unfold. His mother, though, remained the same in the ways that mattered most. She was calm, steady, and focused. But Jaden could see her working behind the scenes, making calls, checking emails, and talking to people who wanted answers. Sometimes she didn't speak much at home, not because she didn't want to, but because her mind was running 1,000 miles an hour. She was trying to make sure that what happened to him didn't happen to anyone else. One afternoon, as Jaden was finishing homework at the kitchen table, she sat down across from him. She looked exhausted, her coffee cup empty, but her eyes were sharp. "We're making progress," she said quietly. He looked up. "Progress?" "Yes," she said. "I've spoken to the department leaders. They've reviewed the footage again and have started a formal investigation into the officers' actions. They realize mistakes were made and they can't ignore it." Jaden nodded slowly. "So everything will be okay?" She smiled faintly. "It's a start. Nothing changes overnight, but it's moving in the right direction." That evening, Jaden went for a walk. He needed to think, to breathe, to feel normal again. The streets were quiet, the sky a soft shade of orange as the sun began to set. For the first time in days, he felt a little lighter. He thought about how his mother had stepped in that night, how she had faced people who could have ignored the situation or made it worse. She had shown courage that wasn't loud or flashy. It was steady and real. When he returned home, he found his mother waiting by the door. She smiled and gestured for him to come inside. "Dinner's ready," she said. But there was a calmness in her voice that made him realize she wanted to talk about more than just food. They ate quietly at first, but soon she spoke. "I've been thinking," she said, "about how often situations like this happen. People are judged by how they look, by assumptions, by fear. It's not just you. It's a problem that goes much deeper." Jaden nodded. "I know, but it's scary to think about it happening to other people too." "I agree," she said, "but that's why we have to speak up. If people stay silent, nothing changes. If we show that speaking up matters, that fairness matters, then we can make a difference." After dinner, they sat in the living room. Jaden's mother turned on the news and saw that clips of her and him had spread even further than before. Some channels highlighted the tension. Others praised her for protecting her son and demanding accountability. Jaden felt a mixture of pride and embarrassment. He didn't like attention, but he was proud of her strength. "Mom," he said softly, "do you think people will really listen?" She looked at him seriously. "Some will, some won't. But the important thing is that the conversation has started. And that's always the first step." That night, Jaden lay in bed thinking about the past week. It felt like a lifetime, filled with fear, confusion, and sudden courage. He remembered the officer's suspicious eyes, the way the street felt heavy, the way his heart raced when he realized he was being treated unfairly. But he also remembered his mother, how she had appeared like a calm storm, powerful and steady, and changed everything in a single moment. The next morning, Jaden's mother decided it was time to take the story further, not for fame or attention, but for awareness. She contacted a community group that focused on youth safety and racial profiling. She wanted them to hear what had happened from her perspective, to show that even small acts of courage could have a big impact. Jaden accompanied her to the meeting. He felt nervous at first, standing beside his mother. But as she spoke, explaining what had happened and how quickly a simple misunderstanding could escalate, he felt a quiet sense of pride. People in the room listened intently. Some took notes, others asked questions. Jaden realized that sharing their story could help others avoid similar fear, confusion, and danger. After the meeting, on the walk home, his mother spoke gently to him. "You see, Jaden, your experience isn't just about you. It's about showing the world that respect and understanding matter. Your courage in that moment, even without realizing it, made a difference." Jaden looked up at her, trying to understand fully. "But I was scared," he admitted. "I didn't know what to do." "I know," she said softly. "Being scared doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And the fact that you stayed calm, that you followed the right steps, that's what matters." Over the next few weeks, the situation began to settle. The department acknowledged the mistakes in their procedures and promised additional training on fair and respectful conduct. Jaden's mother continued to follow up, not to punish, but to make sure that accountability was real. Jaden felt safer. not just because the officers had been held responsible, but because he had seen how one person's courage could make a difference. He started to see the neighborhood in a new way. People greeted him more kindly now, some offering quiet words of support. It was as if the world had shifted slightly, made lighter by the truth that had been spoken and the courage that had been shown. One afternoon, he sat with his mother on the porch, watching the sunset. He felt a mix of relief and understanding. "Mom," he said, "I think I finally get it. It's not about the police or the video or even the fear. It's about speaking up and making sure people are treated fairly." She smiled, her hand resting on his shoulder. "Exactly. That's the lesson. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, steady, and firm. It's the choice to stand for what's right even when it's hard." Jaden leaned back, feeling the warmth of the evening. He realized that the fear he had felt wasn't gone completely, and maybe it never would be. But it had changed. It had become a reminder, a way to understand the importance of fairness, courage, and truth. In the weeks that followed, Jaden returned to his routines. School felt normal again. He studied, hung out with friends, and went for walks in the neighborhood. But the lessons from that week stayed with him. He paid attention to how people treated each other, how small acts of kindness and respect mattered, and how quickly fear and assumptions could escalate. His mother continued her work as both an agent and a parent, balancing both roles with grace. She spoke at community meetings, gave interviews, and made sure that young people like Jaden knew they had rights and protection, no matter who they were. One evening, as they sat together reviewing homework, Jaden turned to her. "Mom, do you think this story will matter to people who never met us?" She thought for a moment. Maybe some will listen, maybe some won't. But even if one person learns from it, it's worth it. Courage and truth ripple out in ways we don't always see. Jaden smiled, feeling a quiet strength inside him. He realized that fear didn't have to control his life. He had seen courage firsthand, and he knew that even when situations seemed unfair or dangerous, standing firm, staying calm, and speaking the truth could change everything. Months later, the story of what happened that afternoon became more than just a news clip. It became an example in community discussions, in classrooms, and even in local safety programs. Jaden's experience, combined with his mother's bravery, showed people that real courage isn't about fighting or anger. It's about protecting what's right, standing for fairness, and showing humanity in the face of fear. Jaden sat on the porch one late afternoon, watching children play in the yard across the street. He thought about how quickly life could change, how fragile safety could feel, and how much a single person's actions could influence the world around them. His mother joined him quietly, handing him a glass of lemonade. She sat down beside him and smiled. "You've grown a lot in the past weeks," she said. "I think I have," Jaden said, thinking of everything he had learned about fear, courage, respect, and truth. "And you've taught me more than I ever realized." She looked at him, her eyes soft and proud. "You've taught yourself too. I just helped you see it." They sat together in silence, the world around them calm and golden with the late sun. Jaden understood that life would still have challenges, moments of fear, and times when fairness wasn't guaranteed. But he also knew that with courage, truth, and the right choices, even ordinary people could make extraordinary changes. The story had ended in one sense. It was no longer a headline or a video clip, but its impact continued. For Jaden, for his mother, and for the people who had witnessed it, it was a lesson in humanity. And as he looked at the setting sun, he felt hope, pride, and a quiet determination that would stay with him for the rest of his life.